everybody, GMGenie here with a word on character creation. So my friend Russell is game mastering an airships campaign, which means it's time for me to play a PC for the first time in years. I don't know how it happened, that's just how our group always works out. So being that this is a Steam game, I put pen to character sheet and came up with Major Tavington Slapdash, Gentleman Gadgeteer. He's got, goggles and mutton chops, a master swordsman and a steady hand at the wheel of the Zeppelin, and above all, he always gives his enemies a sporting chance. So, pretty much the most generic British steampunk character you can think of. He's one of those characters who looks good on paper, but who's boring to play. For me and everyone else at the table. He was a lot of fun to write, but he didn't bring much to the game. And I think this is a common mistake for people who are new to role-playing, or haven't role-played in a while, is to grab hold of the first few ideas you think of when you picture whatever genre you're playing in. And that's a good way to make a generic character. Generic genre. Now we all know generic characters are bad, but it's worth thinking about why. It's because, and this is especially true in a game where more ad-lib is going on, the parts of the story that your PC is interested in are the parts that you're going to explore and that the game master is going to expand. In that way, PCs have a very real power to bring parts of the game world to life, parts that might not even exist otherwise. So if your character is simply the first thing you picture when you think of that genre, your experience of the game world may never go any deeper than that. So if you write a generic PC, you're missing out. And it doesn't affect just you, because all the little angles of the game world that you can potentially explore with your character enhance the whole group's experience. But in the end, it wasn't hard to fix. I rewrote him as a backwoods moonshiner turned gadgeteer, who after 11 years of building the finest stills in the county, found he had a veritable gift from God for building more complex mechanisms and turned to a life of adventure. So that brings in an accent that feels a little less traditional for steampunk, and it explores a new facet of one of the most important steampunk themes, gadgets, with a character who learned tinkering out of necessity and natural gifting rather than an economically privileged hobby. And that's the principle for this video, to make sure your PCs have elements that are fresh in addition to the familiar. And you can see some great examples of this principle in Guardians of the Galaxy. We're familiar with the tank character being somewhat straightforward and lacking any social graces to match the blunt, front-on role that they serve in the party. What's fresh about Drax is he straight up comes from a race that doesn't understand metaphors.
Nothing goes over my head. My reflexes are too fast.
We expect his straightforwardness to come from a low IQ, but in his case it dovetails nicely with a very educated manner of speaking. Rocket's the same mercenary with defense mechanisms that we've already seen in characters like Tony Stark and John Constantine, but he's also the tortured result of unethical experiments, which is itself familiar from things like Babylon 5's Lazarus Project. But we don't expect the grouch with the walled-off heart to be an object of pity for things that have been done to him, or for him to be a raccoon. At first, Groot seems like nothing more than the gentle giant, strong and dumb, but he keeps pulling out unexpected abilities like phosphorescent spores, magic beanstalk growth, and that sacrificial shield that can stop the impact of a falling starship. Feels. In Gamora, you have your typical icy assassin for whom killing is the only life she's ever known, so it's unexpected to have her be the moral center of the group. And Star-Lord. He's that typical thief with the heart of gold character we've all seen before, but a big part of his character is that he makes constant pop culture references from the 70s and 80s. And if you don't believe me that that's a big part of his character, just think about how often you'd have to be coming up with these things to play him. And GOTG is obviously in the pulp/B-movie tradition, which is why its characters can afford to be a little cliche. But it stands out in that tradition because its characters are new enough to explore the tradition in new directions. Similarly, in an RPG, it's okay to play a character we've all seen before. It can even be helpful. But you always want to tweak him so he can bring out parts of the game world that you haven't seen before. I am GMGenie. Check out my blog for new articles on Mondays and game-ready content most Thursdays, and I'll see you next time.